Donald Trump never wanted any bloodshed in any country whatsoever. His promised foreign policy to his voters for both terms was and is simple: America first.
From this day forward, it's going to be only America first. America first.
No direct U.S. involvement in foreign conflicts as much as possible. It is none of America's business what other countries are up to.
But we're not going to get involved in the middle of a war that's fundamentally none of our business.
And if the countries want, America is ready to broker a peace deal. If anything, on paper, it would have been easier to convince a Democrat president to at least back Israel in a war with Iran than the Trump administration to rally behind Israel. Yet, here we are. Donald Trump himself is calling for Iran to surrender, directly threatening to topple the Iranian leader, and dropping bunker buster bombs on Iranian nuclear facilities. Israel too, especially Netanyahu, after constantly pressuring the US for the past 30 years or so to back Israel in a war with Iran, chose to start the war under a US president whose literal foreign policy is to not give a fuck about foreign conflicts. And it worked. What led us to this timeline? What was it that we didn't know? What is the secret? So far, in the past 3 decades, America has had 5 leaders and Israel has had 6. But Netanyahu is the most important of them all. He is the longest-serving prime minister in Israel's history and has had a special obsession with Iran from the earliest. He has been the spearhead behind the recent attacks on Iran, but he's been planting the seeds ever since the 90s. Netanyahu's first ever address to the U.S. Congress in 1996, shortly after becoming the prime minister, had a warning for America that Iran was dangerously close to getting a nuclear bomb.
Nuclearization of terrorist states. But the deadline for attaining this goal is getting extremely close. In our own generation, we've witnessed how the United States averted, by its wisdom, tenacity, and determination, the dangerous expansion of a totalitarian superpower equipped with nuclear weapons. The policy it used for that purpose was deterrence. Now we see the rise of a similar threat, similar and in many ways more dangerous, against which deterrence by itself may not be sufficient. Deterrence must now be reinforced with prevention, immediate and effective prevention. We are confident that America, once again, will not fail to take the lead in protecting our free civilization from this ultimate horror. But ladies and gentlemen, time is running out.
What's interesting about this warning was that the first ever real clandestine proof the world would ever have that Iran is even actually trying to get the bomb would come 6 years later in 2002. Israel had kept an eye on Iran way before Western intelligence, and Iran was slowly becoming the biggest existential threat to Israel. Netanyahu saw this happening closely as the deputy foreign minister of Israel in the early 90s. And if he was to go by his psyche, a war with Iran was unavoidable. Netanyahu's father, Benzion Netanyahu, was a fiercely nationalist historian who believed Jewish survival depended on recognizing existential threats early and acting decisively.
בולטת עמדתו של העם היהודי הסומך על כוחו הצבאי הגדול. עם ישראל מראה היום לעולם כיצד צריכה אומה להתנהג כשהיא עומדת בפני סכנת קיום. להביט עין בעין בפני הסכנה, לשקול בשלוות רוח מה יש לעשות
His brother Yonatan was the only Israeli soldier killed in the 1976 Entebbe raid, and Benjamin Netanyahu himself served in Sayeret Matkal, Israel's elite special forces, and fought in the Yom Kippur War. Being shy of war wasn't in Netanyahu's blood, but what was in Netanyahu's blood was the experience of war, and that experience told him that Israel, on its own, wasn't capable of destroying Iran. They need the USA for that. But Iran wasn't as big of an existential threat to America as it was to Israel. So Netanyahu tried to blur that line. In Netanyahu's own words, no one understood America better than him. Netanyahu had gone to high school and college in the United States, earning a business degree from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and working at the Boston Consulting Group, where he became friends with the future Republican presidential nominee, Mitt Romney. He understood that for America to bring in B-2 bombers and drop bombs on Iran, he had to insert Iran as an existential threat in the American psyche. And his speech in the U.S. Congress, just a few months after becoming the prime minister, was the first step in this very direction. But at the time, Netanyahu had things going against him. Firstly, Netanyahu would lose the election in 1999 and would no longer be the prime minister by the time George W. Bush and Dick Cheney were elected as the president and vice president of the USA, respectively. Cheney in particular would have been Netanyahu's favorite. Secondly, Cheney's incredibly hawkish position on many foreign countries would not have been much helpful for Israel anyway, considering there was 9/11 in 2001, which completely diverted America's attention to Afghanistan and the war on terror away from Iran. However, Netanyahu wasn't going to sit down and sulk. He became the opposition leader in Israel and started pressuring the Israeli government to take a harder line against the Iranian regime. In 2002, when the dossier of the Western intelligence sources, which had clear indications of Iran trying to get a nuclear bomb, was leaked, President Bush sidelined the issue by simply imposing heavier sanctions on Iran and keeping the majority of his attention on Afghanistan and Iraq. This, in turn, put more pressure on the Israeli government, as they weren't able to get America's complete attention. Netanyahu used this pressure as fuel and started giving interviews, speeches, and op-eds warning that Iran was on the brink of nuclear weapons. In 2006, he even compared Iran to Nazi Germany and said, stopping it was the challenge of our time. Eventually, under immense pressure, the Israeli government was forced to adopt a more hardline stance, prompting the United States to take the Iran issue seriously. Together in 2008, they developed Stuxnet, a sophisticated computer worm designed to infiltrate Siemens industrial control systems used in Iran's uranium enrichment facilities. Stuxnet reportedly destroyed around 20% of Iran's nuclear infrastructure. But it wasn't enough to save the Israeli government. Benjamin Netanyahu returned as prime minister in 2009 and immediately resumed his mission. His first ever visit after becoming prime minister again was to America's new president Barack Obama. The savvy, much more heavily experienced Netanyahu wanted to make an impression right away and met President Obama in the Oval Office alone. No one was in the room except him and Obama, while the anxious aides of both leaders waited outside. As hours passed, the anxiety amongst the aides grew more and more, thinking that Netanyahu must have been too much for Obama to handle, and Obama must be getting grilled by Netanyahu about the Palestinians and the hard truths of Israeli security. But when the doors opened, it was Netanyahu who appeared shell-shocked. Netanyahu had gone completely silent and looked traumatized. It was hours later when he told his aides that Obama had attacked him and implored him, actually demanded him, in Netanyahu's view, to freeze Israel's settlements in the West Bank right away, with not a single brick added in the future. Netanyahu knew right away that Obama was not his guy, so he tried to surpass Obama instead. Not far from Iran's holy city of Qum, buried deep inside a mountain, the Fordo fuel enrichment plant was discovered in April 2008 by a source working for British intelligence, which in turn passed rudimentary details about the plant to American and Israeli spy agencies. Unlike the Natanz plant, Fordo was too small to produce usable amounts of civilian nuclear fuel, making it likely that it was created solely for the drive toward a nuclear weapon. Netanyahu took the help of this newfound information and got back together with Obama. He had brought in Uzi Arad, his longtime advisor, to be his national security advisor, and Arad established a direct link with Obama's own national security advisors, General James L. Jones and then Donnellan, to discuss the Iranian nuclear program. Many trips were made from Israel to the US and vice versa. Each side was determined to get things done their way. America had increased its troops in Iraq and had to focus there, but Israel's defense minister, Ehud Barak, went to America and said it up front, "We can't do what you do, so we need to do it sooner." It was all part of the tactic to put more and more pressure on America, to make the US feel that Israel was in a state of urgency, that Iran could get a nuclear bomb any time now, and that Israel will go to war sooner rather than later, and if necessary, without the US backing. Israel could even get a green light from the international community if it attacked, considering in 2011, the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, released a landmark report detailing evidence suggesting Iran had worked on nuclear weapons-related activities, some of which may have continued beyond 2003. It seemed like the stars were getting aligned for an Israeli attack, but when push came to shove, Netanyahu was left like a headless chicken. The American intelligence had gotten information that there were internal struggles amongst the Israeli defense and intelligence ministries. Most of the Israeli defense and intelligence leaders had refused to start the war with Iran. They knew Israel just wasn't powerful enough to deal with Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran at the same time, when there was no confirmation from the US on whether it would provide support or not. Netanyahu fired most of Israel's top defense and intelligence leaders, but the people appointed in their place also refused to go to war without US support. This was welcome news for Obama, but Obama wasn't going to wait until Netanyahu appointed yes men in his defense ministries to wage a war on Iran. Netanyahu's plan of bypassing Obama was failing, and Obama bypassed Netanyahu instead. Two of Obama's top national security advisors aboard a commercial aircraft bound for Muscat, Oman. There, they met the country's ruler, Sultan Qaboos bin Said. Inside one of the Sultan's palaces, the two advisors delivered a message that Obama wanted the Omani ruler to give to only Iran's supreme leader. The United States thought there was a chance for a peaceful resolution to the nuclear standoff with Iran, but was prepared to take military action if Iran rejected diplomacy. The United States could accept Iran's harnessing of nuclear power for civilian use, but any military purpose for its nuclear program was intolerable. Yes, you heard that right. Obama was making a deal with Iran directly without giving Israel even a glimpse. It was called the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA. For Obama, the deal wasn't just a way to silence Israel's sense of urgency. He genuinely believed it could stop Iran from getting nuclear weapons. Naturally, pulling off such a deal required years of intense behind-the-scenes negotiations. The final agreement wasn't reached until 2015, but that still gave Israeli intelligence enough time to catch wind of it. Netanyahu was quickly informed, but surprisingly not surprised. He knew that after he failed to land his first jab, Obama would come in swinging, and there was nothing he could do. As a last-ditch effort, Israeli diplomats and supportive lawmakers tried lobbying against the deal and against lifting sanctions on Iran. Sanctions that, ironically, were the leverage that brought Iran to the negotiating table in the first place. But of course, all efforts failed, and the deal went through.
The United States, together with our international partners, has achieved something that decades of animosity has not. A comprehensive long-term deal with Iran that will prevent it from obtaining a nuclear weapon.
It seemed at the time that Obama had won the war against Netanyahu. So, when the U.S. Congress Speaker John Boehner's office notified the State Department of a planned speech, the Obama administration was left confused. The Obama administration had only heard rumors of such, but figured he couldn't sneak his way into the U.S. Congress. They were wrong, of course. On 3rd March 2015, Netanyahu addressed the U.S. Congress and made many remarks against the Iran deal.
ISIS is armed with butcher knives, captured weapons, and YouTube, whereas Iran could soon be armed with intercontinental ballistic missiles and nuclear bombs. We must always remember, I'll say it one more time, the greatest danger facing our world is the marriage of militant Islam with nuclear weapons. To defeat ISIS and let Iran get nuclear weapons would be to win the battle but lose the war. We can't let that happen.
But all these remarks were nothing but empty words. His address made no sense at all. It was like a man talking to a wall. At least, that's what the Obama administration thought. Israel's defense minister even complained about this to Netanyahu. He said it showed not just Netanyahu, but also Israel in a bad taste. This was when Netanyahu told his defense minister, "No one understands America like I do." When he addressed Congress in 2015, the majority was Republican, and the 2016 presidential election was just around the corner. Up to that point, Netanyahu had rocky experiences with Democratic presidents, and he hadn't been prime minister during the Bush years. He had tried to help his friend Mitt Romney in the 2012 election, but Obama won again. Now, in 2016, with Obama no longer in the race, Netanyahu put all his chips on a Republican nominee. That 2015 speech to Congress wasn't really about stopping the Iran deal. It was about connecting with and earning favor from the Republican Party. After the Obama failure, Netanyahu had realized one thing. To make Iran a big enough issue, it wasn't just necessary to make it big in the psyche of the American people, but more importantly, so in the psyche of the people that surround the President of America. It was true no one in Israel knew America better than Benjamin Netanyahu. In 2016, Republican nominee Donald Trump was elected as the new president, and Netanyahu was the first one to call Trump a true friend of Israel. John Bolton, the national security advisor for Trump, had known Netanyahu since the Bush era. Bolton has been involved in various pro-Israel groups such as the Zionist Organization of America and the Republican Jewish Coalition. Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, comes from a family that has known Netanyahu for decades, even hosting him at their home in New Jersey, where Netanyahu once stayed overnight. Jared Kushner served as a senior advisor to Trump and helped broker the Abraham Accords in 2020, which normalized diplomatic relations between Israel and several Arab nations, marking a historic shift in Middle Eastern geopolitics. Less than 2 weeks after Inauguration Day, Mike Flynn, the national security advisor, took to the White House lectern and said that the White House was officially putting Iran on notice.
Iran continues to threaten U.S. friends and allies in the region. The Obama administration failed to respond adequately to Tehran's malign actions, including weapons transfers, support for terrorism, and other violations of international norms. As of today, we are officially putting Iran on notice.
Officially, the White House was still on track to keep the Iran deal, just renegotiating it. But in the background, Trump was firing people who were trying to negotiate. On the other hand, Netanyahu was helping Trump from the outside to cancel the deal. In January 2018, a high-stakes Mossad operation enabled the theft of tens of thousands of documents, videos, and photographs being housed in a warehouse on the outskirts of Tehran. Netanyahu met with Trump in March 2018 in the White House and shared details of the operation. They had thought of hosting a joint press conference to reveal the details to the world, but eventually decided not to. In late April, Netanyahu went on a televised presentation in Israel and revealed the fruits of the operation to the world.
A few weeks ago, in a great intelligence achievement, Israel obtained 1/2 ton of the material inside these vaults. And here's what we got. 55,000 pages, another 55,000 files on 183 CDs. Everything you're about to see is an exact copy of the original Iranian material.
And just a week later, Donald Trump withdrew from the Iran deal, citing the same concerns found through Mossad's operation. Netanyahu's plan was working. Along with Bolton and Kushner, Netanyahu was keeping close ties with other Trump cabinet members as well, always making sure the pro-Israel stance remains the majority. Along with canceling the deal and increasing sanctions on Iran, in 2020, Trump took out Major General Qasem Soleimani, head of Iran's elite Quds force.
Soleimani was plotting imminent and sinister attacks on American diplomats and military personnel, but we caught him in the act and terminated him.
Iran retaliated by striking 2 U.S. air bases in Iraq. Thankfully, no casualties were reported, and the situation de-escalated quickly. Then, Corona happened, the world went into shutdown, and then Biden was elected. In 2021, Netanyahu himself lost the prime minister's post, but was back by the end of 2022. In 2023, on October 7th, Hamas launched its biggest operation against Israel, and since then, under the disguise of retaliation, Israel has obliterated Hamas. Hezbollah in Lebanon had also been heavily targeted in 2024, with 70% of its total firepower destroyed. By late 2024, Assad's regime in Syria was overthrown by rebel groups. However, amongst all this chaos, Netanyahu's plans did not falter. He still kept close ties with Trump. Along with Biden and the leaders of the pro-Israeli groups, these groups lobbied and donated more than $200 million to Republicans, such as Marco Rubio, the current Secretary of State, Pete Hegseth, the current Secretary of Defense, J.D. Vance, the current Vice President, and of course Donald Trump, the President of the United States of America for the second time. Trump became the president again in 2025 and quickly started the peace talks just like he'd promised. Trump hosted Ukrainian President Zelensky and even talked to Putin to try and broker a deal to stop the Russia-Ukraine war. He'd announced an India-Pakistan ceasefire in their most recent war. Trump also sent a delegation to try again and make a deal with Iran. But also on the sidelines, America launched Operation Rough Rider. During this operation, air and naval strikes targeted the Houthis' radar systems, missile launchers, drone facilities, and command centers. Over 600 Houthi terrorists were also killed in the operation. By June 2025, Iran found itself without any allies capable of supporting it. This was the moment Netanyahu had been waiting for, and on the night of June 13th, it finally happened. Israel attacked Iran's major nuclear bases, with the United States backing the strike. On June 22nd, America sent 3 B-2 bombers to bomb Iran's key nuclear sites, Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan, using bunker buster bombs. Iran did retaliate by again hitting an American airbase in Qatar, but the retaliation wasn't big enough. Because even Iran knows if it harms America, the entire existence of Iran is in danger. The supreme leader of Iran, Khomeini himself, had gone into hiding, and now that a ceasefire is announced, Iran's nuclear mission has at least been set behind a decade. The talk of overthrowing Ayatollah Khomeini is growing in Iran now. Not to mention the tensions between the government and the people of Iran were already pretty evident since the protests of 2022. The people of Iran literally wanted Israel to win the war and topple Khomeini, so if Khomeini goes, it's another win for Netanyahu. For the past 3 decades, Netanyahu has been playing the long game, convincing Israel's closest ally to see Iran as the ultimate threat. Then, one by one, he dismantled Iran's regional allies and aligned with its enemies. And when everything was finally in place, he pulled the plug. Congratulations to the Middle East and the United States. Netanyahu just played them all. Just a last message. If you liked the video, please make sure to subscribe and comment what else you would like to watch. Thank you.